Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have U.S. Court of International Trade blocks tariffs, says President doesn't have authority to set them under IEEPA, from Axios.com, posted by LegioX. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for the whole legal system and any courts really. I don't really care for any government authority. But with that being said, ultimately people will justify what they justify regardless of what the courts say. And I think that's a big reason of why I really don't like any courts, especially this one here, because they aren't the ones actually enforcing the laws; they're just the ones making the laws. You just can't make law. You just can't make laws and say laws, but you actually have to enforce them. So that's why, as I've said in the past on this podcast, it doesn't matter who's actually making or writing down the laws. What matters is how they're enforced. So that's why, I think we need to have, ultimately people will justify if they justify. It doesn't really matter what the law's written as or what the judge says it is, rather how the police officer or soldier enforces it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have U.S. cancels more than $700 million in funding for Moderna bird flu vaccine from Reuters.com, posted by Swamp Yankee Dan. And yeah, personally, I don't think the government should be paying private businesses for vaccines. I think private businesses should be developing vaccines without government funds. I don't think government funds should be going to private things for anything, pretty much. So I would agree that canceling the $700 million funding is the libertarian perspective. If Moderna does want to make a bird flu vaccine, I think they should be able to, but I don't think they should be entitled to government money for making it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Texas forces Google and Apple to verify ages in app stores. Teen social media ban could be next, from National.com, posted by Donald Key, and that's a crosspost from the technology subreddit. And yeah, personally, I don't think the government should be enforcing private age verification in app stores. I do think age verification is well intentioned. I don't think kids should be looking at stuff like a lot of what was on social media or porn, but it's not the government's job to enforce. It's the job of the parent or guardian to enforce, rather than that of the state. I think all of this is, I've argued all of this is well intentioned. There's a lot of stuff online and on the app store that can really fuck you up if you're a kid. But it's not the state's job to deal with, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Thank Goodness for Libertarian Law Firms by Lemon Limelight, and they said from National Review, thank goodness for libertarian law forms. On April 2nd, Donald Trump unilaterally imposed tariffs on all imports in violation of the Constitution. The unconstitutionality was plain as day, but the president went through with the policy anyway. The question became, well, who will do something about it? One might think Congress would. Its authority was usurped, and it has the legislative power to do something about it. That assumes Congress is actually interested in using its constitutional authority. It isn't. With Congress impotent, one might think that business groups would challenge the tariffs, yet there would be no businesses from Walmart, Amazon, the Chamber of Commerce, or the National Federation of Independent Businesses. Big businesses seem to have calculated they're better off trying to kiss up to Trump than to challenge him. Small businesses often lack the resources to bring a major lawsuit on their own. Thankfully, there are libertarian public interest law firms to pick up the slack. The case the Trump administration lost at the U.S. Court of International Trade was brought by the Liberty Justice Center. Another case challenging the tariffs was brought by the Pacific Legal Foundation. Yet another was brought by the New Civil Liberties Alliance, NCLA. All three of these libertarian public interest law firms are doing jobs that others should not have done but didn't, namely challenging blatantly unconstitutional actions by the president. Nearly every argument these firms make in court is a variation of the simple theme, hey, the government did something unconstitutional that is hurting people, the government should really follow the Constitution, please read the Constitution and tell the government to knock it off. The government, in many cases, won't knock it off unless it is challenged, even if its behavior is blatantly unconstitutional, as it was with these tariffs or with Biden's student loan plans or any other number of cases. If Congress won't stand up to the president and big business, this too cozy government to pick a fight, it's good to know that a handful of libertarian lawyers with a few obscure small business clients can point to the Constitution and win. And yeah, as I said earlier, I personally do think, the government should be following the Constitution, but the government has never really followed the Constitution since since the ink was dry on the paper. The government can justify doing whatever it wants to, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. These guys did try and do something about it, but even if the court says Trump, you can't do these tariffs. I'm personally against these tariffs. I'm against all taxes because I don't think the government should be artificially inflating or deflating what you pay for something. But it's ultimately what the government's what the law is willing to justify. Trump might say screw this, and I'm going to do tariffs anyway, and ultimately since people usually defer to the president, that is what might ultimately happen, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. So it doesn't really matter what the courts say. It matters who wants to enforce what and who wants to justify enforcing what. And yeah, that's all government for you. It's who has the power, and laws ultimately who whatever those in power say it is. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Hobbesianism, the Path to Libertarian Nationalism from X.com by creepy account 7510, and that's a link to a tweet from the LP Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. We are libertarian nationalists. We must secure the existence of a libertarian nation for us and our children. If you believe libertarian nationalism is equivalent to ethno-nationalism, the only person you're telling on is yourself. And they shared a picture. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for libertarian children. And, that's kind of like the libertarian version of the 14 words that which are considered white nationalists these days. But let's see what they added, the creepy account added in the description. Hobbesianism doesn't advance liberty. It lurches toward libertarian nationalism, a paleo-libertarian repackaging of ideological nationalism. It elevates exclusivity over equality, glorifies gated communities as models of order, and justifies the physical removal of dissenters, all under the banner of feudalist freedom. Behind the mask of radical privatization lies a blueprint for exclusion, reactionary, regressive, and fundamentally incompatible with authentic liberty. The advocates of alternative, non-family-centered lifestyles, such as, for instance, individual hedonism, parasitism, nature and environment worship, homosexuality, or communism, will have to be physically removed from society too if one is to maintain a libertarian order. From Hobbes' book Democracy, the God That Fell, 2001, page 218. Libertarians must distinguish themselves from others by practicing as well as advocating the most extreme form of intolerance and discrimination against egalitarians, Democrats, socialists, communists, multiculturalists, environmentalists, ill manners, misconduct, incompetence, rudeness, vulgarity, and obscenity. Democracy, the God That Failed, page 218. The free society is the natural order of a community of individuals who share a common set of values and norms and who voluntarily exclude outsiders who do not conform to those norms. Democracy, the God That Failed, page 145. Equality as a value is both a myth and an ideological weapon used to justify redistribution and the suppression of natural inequalities. Democracy, the God That Failed, page 217. LP&H's Hoppian purity test isn't just a stubborn ideological quirk, it's a dangerous dead end. They prioritize rigid tribalism and cultural homogeneity over building a real inclusive movement. This isn't about principled libertarianism, it's about exclusion dressed up as freedom. Worse, their rhetoric regularly flirts with white nationalist language, alienating anyone outside their narrow circle and handing the party's critics ammunition to paint the entire Libertarian Party as racist. Hobbes' legacy is clear. Reactionary, exclusionary, and fundamentally at odds with genuine liberty. It fractures libertarianism from within, turning what should be a broad tent to a gay community for the ideologically pure. If the ILP wants to matter, it needs to reject this toxic undercurrent and build real bridges instead of walls. Every libertarian candidate must confront and condemn these ideas openly. Science or equivocation only enables the poison to spread and do lasting damage to the party's credibility and future. The libertarian way forward is an ideological purchase with vigorous debate and clear boundaries, condemn exclusionary rhetoric without shutting down free discourse, emphasize universal liberty, freedom for all, not just those with a narrow cultural archetype, focus on coalition building with movements that share the libertarian goals, criminal justice reform, anti-cronyism, anti-war activism. Hobbesianism is truly a dead end for libertarianism. The Libertarian Party must choose. Will it be a philosophy of liberation or a niche for reactionary gatekeepers? The answer will determine whether libertarianism grows or rivers into irrelevance. I really hope that the party, at large, fully rejects libertarian nationalism. I am very deeply concerned that such an ideology leads to the rejection of NAP, the whole basis of the party, which I am a proud member of. And I guess I would agree with most of that. Ultimately, I think LP&H, a lot of their Hoppian neo-Nazi rhetoric is mostly just edgelording for attention. It's like Kanye's new song, Hail Hitler. Social media's really become whoever can bait the best at this point. That's pretty much all it is. All social media is bait at this point, really, to get attention. So, but regardless, ultimately, if people do want to form voluntary collectives based on, their race or their sexual orientation or their gender, etc., etc. I think the libertarian position is, libertarians allow for voluntary collectives of any kind even if, you might disagree with the makeup of them. And yeah, I'm personally against physical removal from society, but ultimately, if a private community wants to justify enforcing anything on someone who doesn't conform to their norms, then that's on them. Sometimes, each individual can justify using force forever they feel like, and if individuals want to justify use of collective force, then I think they should be able to. Ultimately, people will justify what they justify, regardless of the system of governance in place. And if you do want to, and if the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire does want to form a libertarian nationalist commune where people who don't meet the desired traits reside and want to take them out, ultimately they have the ability to justify whatever use of force they feel like in that regard. Then we have systems are crumbling, but daily life continues. The dissonance is real from theguardian.com, posted by Ninja Lover. And yeah, personally, I don't think our systems are crumbling. I think the media loves to be what's the term? I'm trying to think of the term here. They love to hyper turn everything into this hyper I can't get the exact term. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't get it right now. They always sensationalize. What's so sensationalize? They always love to sensationalize everything's going on. They say, "Oh, the sky's falling, the world's crumbling." But eventually, you got to realize that Chicken Little, the media can only say the sky is falling for so long. It's also kind of like the Boy Who Cried Wolf. They can only say the sky is falling for so long before people start to wake up and say, we're still getting along pretty fine. They've pretty much been saying the sky is falling in regards to Trump and his administration since even before he was elected in 2015, 2016, and we're still here today, and everyone's pretty much getting along relatively well, despite what the media are saying. And yeah, that's why, increasingly they're the legacy media. They're just pushing these narratives out that, society's collapsing, Donald Trump is literally Hitler, and people are waking up that they go on social media and everything seems like civil war is imminent and society is about to completely collapse on itself. But then you turn off the computer, turn off the TV, and go outside, and everything seems relatively fine. And that just goes to show you how, it's just this media sensationalism that people are tired of, and that's why no one increasingly trusts them anymore. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Musk's SpaceX town in Texas warns residents they might lose right to continue using their property from CNBC.com, posted by Ninja Lover, and they added, company towns sure are great. And I think that they're being sarcastic there. But regardless, as I said with in one of the previous posts, ultimately, if Musk does own all the land and he wants to enforce strict rules on his own property, then ultimately he can justify doing whatever he wants to. If he wants to kick out people who he doesn't think meet his standard, he has the ability to do that. And that's why I'm personally very much against private authoritarianism like public authoritarianism, but sometimes there's nothing you can do, and that's my thoughts there. And let's see if there's anything new. Looks like nothing new, so we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.